Yep.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Planet FPL, the world where everything revolves around Fantasy Premier League. My name's Such.
And my name is James.
You're in the hot seat, James.
I'm back. I'm here. Hashtag James is back. We basically just sacked Clayton because he's in the top 10k. So we got that's enough. Get rid of that.
Problem is, that's the only way we're going to get any listeners around here. It's the only way we're going to get any listeners around here. We are not even all the way through the game week, James, and we had two fewer fixtures than usual as well.
Might keep this one a little shorter then, maybe, or maybe not, because I haven't spoke for about 4 days. So,
you and the missus not talking? No,
we never talk.
Actually,
no. Bless her. She's been very good and very helpful to me. So,
nice.
And thank you for all the kind and well wishes people have sent. I can confirm by obviously sitting here and being in the same room as Suj that I am not dead, despite the fact I think many might have been hoping for my demise. No, I'm still here and I'm back. The drugs work. I've always said they don't, but they do work. Pain is in a good place at the moment. Let's say that it's not out the woods or anything, but put it this way, I'm well enough to be here. So yeah, in a good place at the moment.
Nice. And your FPL team has had a good weekend as well. Your midfield was solid so far.
Not bad. That's because I haven't done anything, so that's probably why I've had a good week, right? Transfers don't always tend to work out. So, yeah, I think you summed that up quite well across the midfield, the 33 points from Saka, Bailey, Foden. He's nice. I hadn't quite noticed that every midfielder that's played for me so far is on double digits. Is Jared Bowen going to add to that tonight, Suj?
Unlikely, but, if your team is any indication, then sure.
Ollie Watkins returned, captained Haaland. That's my lot. I'm on 57. That has been a 50k rise for me up to 225k. With obviously the two West Ham to go tonight in Areola and Bowen, so could get a little bit better. But I'm aware that there's obviously Tony out there and there'll be a bit of Brentford defensive ownership. Might be a few kudos differentials out there as well. So no guarantee it will get better. But yeah, I'm pretty content with that. I was always going to be quite well set, I think. Going into 26, like my team had everyone at home bar Man City players. So it kind of looked a little bit like a free hit team as well. Realised there was some I didn't go into, such as Wolves. Yes, there's a content creator who didn't buy Hwang Hee-Chan this week. And Suj also, oh no, you did buy him.
I bought Hwang this week. I'm only on 40 points this week, even though I went against the robot for captaincy. And went with Ollie Watkins.
Oh, nice. Well done.
Did all right for me. But so it kind of started well. Okay, Ollie Watkins, goal and assist and no BPS in the end, but whatever. And Haaland not returning. I was like, okay, maybe it'll be all right. But I don't own Saka. And Saka's been a thorn in the side for ages. Clayton and I debated it out on Friday or Thursday, one of the shows, I can't remember, where someone said, who are the essential... that if you could only have a few people from this game
this is what happens. I take a couple of days off and you lot start talking about essentials.
No, but we talked about the three. If you could pick any, who are the ones that could hurt? Like, because you can't have everyone in a blank game week, right? So if you could only have a few, who would you definitely have? Haaland, because of the captaincy. Watkins, home tie against Nottingham Forest. The only other player was Saka.
Great.
At 61% ownership. He was the other one that could hurt. Like your Arsenal defensive or a couple of the others could hurt, but Saka at 61% was particularly high.
It's not 61% though, is it? It's much more than that.
Yeah, because of the effective and live managers. So anyway, I thought I'd just go with Hwang instead of Saka, just for the potential upside of two home fixtures being Sheffield United and Fulham. And he didn't return, but it's a 3-week transfer, so let's see how he gets on in the next two. Hindsight being all that, like Saka has been so consistent for a little while, maybe he would have been the better.
Thank God I brought him back last week.
I've only got, the way I see it now, there are only 13 weeks left or 12 weeks left. There's only 10, 12 decisions left to make this season in FPL.
Depends what chips you got left, mate.
No, of course,
I'd argue that's nearer 30.
Yeah, it depends whether or not you call using a wild card 1 decision or 15 decisions.
I think on a wild card it's 15 decisions.
Although there'll be a handful of players that just will be non-decisions. Either way, I'm going to do my level best between now and the end of the season to not captain Haaland and only buy players that I feel like a bit of fun.
Okay.
I'm really surprised because I didn't consume a lot of content on. Well, I don't consume a lot of content on the internet anyway. I thought Hwang was a punt. I didn't realise that many
Felt
people.
like everybody bought him.
Yeah, I'm blown away by that. If you'd have said to me how many people are going to buy Hwang on Friday, I would have thought hardly any.
And it's obviously not everybody, I jest somewhat.
Yeah, it feels like it, but obviously I'm surprised how many actually did because I thought it was a complete.
It would have made a lot of sense for a lot
bother?
of people this week. Jota owners, Richarlison owners,
Palmer maybe.
Cole Palmer, absolutely similar value. Maybe even people are frustrated with the likes of Jared Bowen. So I mean, for a lot of people, I think it just fell into place, and I don't think it was a bad transfer at all. I did a piece on
2 home games, Sheffield United and Fulham.
Yeah, and Newcastle away are giving up so many chances, fine as well, right? Yeah. So I think it was very much a week decision, and the impact on that afterwards is very much dependent on whether Wolves play in 29
FA Cup.
or not, or if people are free hitting.
Later this week.
For those who are free hitting, it's not a bad one to carry a little bit further on. Their fixtures, it's Villa away in 30, but their fixtures afterwards aren't too bad. They fall into a category, Wolves, I think that if you were or are free hitting in 29, they're the sort of team that probably appeal a little bit more. And 3 teams who haven't played this weekend, I think, will appeal more to free hitters. Tottenham, Liverpool and Chelsea, I think, will come back on the agenda for certain people this week. But the landscape could change very much. I basically know what my transfer is going to be this week, but have not made it. It's the same one I was thinking about last week, Alvarez to Solanke. Which is a certainty for me this week. And I did think Saturday night, Alvarez looked like he was going to drop in price. Solanke was going to go up. I don't know, that might have even happened last night. I was like, no, let it go. Think of external factors in terms of games happening this week. What if Solanke gets injured tomorrow night in the FA Cup? What if Erling Haaland gets injured? Probably don't want to lose Alvarez under that perspective suddenly. It would be Haaland that I would lose, right? And obviously the information from the cup games as well. Now, almost definitely I'm buying Solanke almost no matter what. But I still ain't doing that until these cup games are gone. I think the other most likely transfer for me this week, Suj, and I will have the money to do it, is Jota to Hwanging Son. Because then I could afford to. I know me and Clayton discussed last Monday about considering players that other people wouldn't be able to get to. And I think he'll fall into that line for me and therefore will be the one worth getting. But I've got flags defensively, right? Pedro Porro, Pau Torres again, and they'd both be starting for me this week. So again, it's a wait for me. The information that we can learn from the cup games and particularly the draw in the next 60 hours or so is massive. We will do another chip strategy podcast on Thursday.
Yeah, I've got that same transfer, Alvarez to Solanke there. Boring though, isn't it, really? Let's be honest.
Then don't do it, but nearly every man needs
boring.
Dog. To be honest,
I think
FPL managers
but
fall
I'll probably
into,
add another one.
FPL managers fall into 3 categories with Solanke. There's those who own him, those who are buying this week, and those who are buying next week.
It's true. Unless, of course, injuries can play a part and throw everything up in the mix.
And it would be so typical FPL for Dominic Solanke to get injured at Burnley on Sunday. Or even, let me put it a better way, hobble off against Leicester and us not to know whether he's available or not for the weekend. There probably would be more to the point.
Yeah. I'm not desperate to make that move. Like, as in, if I didn't make the Alvarez to Solanke move this week, it will be the week after. Like, when I say I'm not desperate to, I've got enough okay fixtures from the rest of my bench. Like, if I didn't play Alvarez, I play Souček, Everton away. Okay, whatever. Or Alfie Doherty.
Is Souček even going to play, mate?
Who knows? But I've got Doherty, Aston Villa at home. He will play. There's always a bit of attacking threat there potentially. Like, I don't need to force it. Put it that way. But if I buy Solanke, then I should really take a -4 for something else as well, for a bit of fun, shouldn't I?
Why should you?
Because this game's about having a bit of fun.
Okay, if that's your way of fun, have some fun then,
yeah,
mate.
I think I need to.
All right. Sell Haaland.
I need to get rid of...
If you're not going to captain him, sell Haaland and go all out on it, mate.
Who to? Oh,
Solanke.
What could I do with the money?
There is a case, I think, that Personally, selling Haaland before Manchester United at home that hasn't got Lisandro Martinez or Luke Shaw is not something I'd want to do. My intention would still be to captain Haaland this week. But afterwards, Liverpool away, blank, Arsenal. If you're going to bet against, this would be the sort of time to do it.
I'm going to go Ollie Watkins again. Luton away, captain, armband.
Okay.
No, what about your boy, Richarlison? Crystal Palace at home.
No. I think Saka will be very popular for captaincy this week. I think Zio will be over 100%.
Wow, okay.
I think he'll probably be a loser in the book if you don't captain him. Worth bearing in mind, obviously Haaland will be the same as well. But my intention would still be to captain Haaland.
Good. Let's talk about some chips.
You want to talk about chips?
Not in the sense of let's have a long, in-depth conversation about chips. Let's just tell everybody about Thursday so that we can bookmark and kick forward the conversation about chips.
Yeah, as mentioned, Chip Strategy Pod on Thursday.
Yes.
I've seen lots of talk of definitive, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. Well, when Newcastle, Manchester United and Manchester City all lose over the next 60 hours, we might all feel different about life. And I think even if you look at yesterday's Carabao Cup final, which featured Liverpool and the blue billionaire bottle jobs, as Gary Neville's words, not mine.
They were Gary Neville's words until everybody else decided to repeat them and make them their own.
Stunning, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But, I mean, look at Liverpool going into that game with Southampton now. Like, what team is he going to pick? They've got Forest on Saturday. Could he just sack it off and just play kids against Southampton? I would not rule out Liverpool getting beat on Wednesday night after that yesterday and what they went through. And Chelsea are obviously going to be massively fatigued against the Leeds side, who I did watch them against Leicester on Friday night and won 3-1. And I think they're on about 9 wins in a row or something, Leeds.
Wow.
Must say, they were fortunate Friday night because Leicester should have put the game to bed before they won it. But they'll go and give Chelsea a game, and Chelsea are going to be on fragile mindset. So the whole outlook, suddenly you might have Arsenal playing again in 29. Whole outlook might look very, very different. We will also, after this week, or these next couple of days, understand far better the probabilities for game week 34 and 37. So for those not free hitting in 29, have probably a better understanding of whether it's 34, 37 or 28 or even 38 or 36. I might even talk about some of those as prospects for free hits on Thursday as well. So we'll go over the chips again. And I feel like Thursday will be the final kind of, I think on the last chip pod we did, I said you kind of need to narrow down to A versus B in terms of your plans. Thursday, it's locking in that plan. And that can still have flexibility like free hit 34 or 37. But it needs to be a clear direction, certainly for 29.
Aston Villa 4, Nottingham Forest 2. Should we get into these games?
Yeah, can I just say, I am drugged up and I am going to say some things incorrectly.
Me too, peeps.
Like when I do,
no, really.
and I know I do anyway because I rush my words. But when I do, can you try and jump in and correct me?
Nah, we're just going to create a little blooper reel.
You can create that every week with me anyway.
Yeah, obviously having armbanded Watkins, for him to score so early, I'm like, all right, come on, fill your boots time. I was out with the kids. We went to the British Museum for some reason. Mrs. was away for a couple of days. Nice. Anyway, was on the tube. So came back out of the tube to see 3-0, thinking, yeah, I am going to fill my boots, and nothing more for Ollie Watkins. In the end, just a lowly assist to go with the goal. But if you'd said to me prior to the game, 4-2 Aston Villa, you'd feel comfortable captaining Ollie Watkins. So decision, happy with. Outcome could have been better. But still 9 points, so no worries.
Well, it's 9 points because Leon Bailey and Douglas Luiz went off big time, right?
Yeah.
That's why he's not ended up in too much of... Was he in the bonus at all?
In the end, he wasn't. He was for periods, and in the end, just fell out. No BPS.
Oh, so John McGinn with just the assist. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
Luiz, remarkable. Did you see the tweet I posted last night, I think, Suj, about Douglas Luiz?
I haven't been on the old Twitter, James.
So, Douglas Luiz now is up to what? 6th highest scoring midfielder in the game or something?
Okay.
75.38% of his points in FPL this season have been in home games. It's an average of 7.54 points per game. In away games, he's averaging 2.67. I don't know if we've ever seen the disparity that big on one player. And by the way, this carries into the back end of last season as well. He scored at home to Brighton in game week 38 last year. Tottenham at home in game week 36, I think that was last year. So his record at home is staggering. What I would say is, in terms of, oh my God, Kamara's out the team, he's going to end up playing deeper. Actually, yeah, he might still be. He's just arriving in the right place at the right time in terms of the 2 goals that he scored. Both open play goals-ish in terms of the header. I know it's a breakdown from a set piece originally, but he arrives into the box at the right time. So he's still going to be allowed to do that. And I think John McGinn will also crash into the box. So you'll probably get them turn-taking a little bit more in terms of what they're doing. I'm not surprised that people overlooked him, because despite his consistency, and obviously not everybody has, some have bought him, but he certainly wasn't flavour of the week like Hwang.
He was definitely in the thoughts, though.
Of course, but it was...
for one simple reason. The only reason I spent maybe 3 minutes thinking Douglas Luiz over Hwang was simple. Game week 29. I was like, do I want to just get Douglas Luiz because he's guaranteed to play in game week 29? And again, it didn't feel like it was enough of a reason to go against the upside of Hwang. But that's why I think a lot of people may have gone to him, just because he plays.
Yeah, 5th highest scoring midfielder, 130 points. It's 98 of them in home games. That's remarkable. Yeah. So he's got, for example, more points in home games this season than the likes of Jota, Diaz, Martinelli, Kulusevski, Havertz, Bruno Fernandes. Some of those have been injured, missed games. But I've got in home and away games.
Yeah, it's true.
So
and Ollie Watkins now highest scoring player in the entire game, James.
Yes, at the moment. That's obviously part impacted by the robots' injuries as well. I'm more surprised. I don't think there's much to say on Watkins. I think for those heading towards game week 29, he is the number one kind of cover. Like, although it's West Ham away and it's not the easiest fixture, it's the one you've got to know that everybody building towards it is going to go for him. Everyone free hitting is going to go for him. He's the number one that, people, how many do I need to have game week 29? You probably need to have Ollie Watkins as a first priority. He's also anytime, any place, right? If Villa play well and create chances, he'll have chances. I'm more surprised, Serge, we talked about Luiz. I'm more surprised there wasn't a bit of a steam into Bailey, though, for the upside reasons of what he can be and the form he's in. He's in absolutely brilliant form. I know it's off-putting because of his injury record, etc. And I've also spoken about the problem with his relationship with Matthew Cash on that side of the pitch. But he's banging form, and I think he'll pick up attention. I think he'll pick up as much attention as Luiz over this forthcoming period. And he's a brilliant differential, Leon Bailey. I'm very pleased that he's sitting in my squad at the moment. He could have had more than what he got at the weekend as well. He's exactly what I discussed with Clates last week. You want to go on the metrics and you start going down the Bailey, Luiz route, etc., then Bailey's going to kill it on expected per 90.
Who would you buy new, Bailey or Luiz?
For me now, as it's an away game, this way I'd buy Bailey. Yeah.
If you're holding through to a 29 as a longer term?
Well, Luiz has only got one home game.
So you'd go Bailey still, you think?
I think so. And I think even if I look at that one home game as obviously Tottenham, it should be a good fixture for Bailey and Watkins in terms of their counter-attacking prowess. They will obviously have a little less of the ball than they would normally have in home games. But Villa will come and press and get in Tottenham's faces in that game. I'm pretty sure of that. So, yeah, to be honest, it would be Bailey for me. It's not to discount or put anyone off Luiz. It's like how many times you're going to keep overlooking it, right?
Correct.
So he's doing very, very well. Villa are obviously going to stay very much on radar heading towards 29. And interestingly, I think Forest will become a team that gets on people's radars no matter what they decide to do. So obviously if they play in 29, it's a fixture against Luton, which is perfectly reasonable. And their fixture run begins to look good. I think people there's going to be a shortage of forwards probably in 29. Someone like Hwang Hee, although you need to bear in mind he went off at half-time at the weekend, but apparently precautionary, might get a little bit of attention. I think Morgan Gibbs-White. I think Elanga for those who need an enabler. And also, actually, even if you are free hitting in 29 and you're removing that week from your psyche, then Forest are actually one of the better ones, I think, if you're free hitting as well after you get beyond Liverpool. So after you've got beyond Liverpool this week, you look at for the offensive players, Brighton away, then free hits you wouldn't use, Palace at home, Fulham at home, or if you're not free hitting, put Luton in the middle of that. So there's a little period coming up after Liverpool where I think Forest players might create a little bit of attention. They played Niakate at left back, which I think was because they didn't want Toffolo to go up against Bailey. I think Toffolo will probably come back into the team, perhaps subject to Mo Salah's fitness for the weekend, perhaps. But he does seem to be sticking now with this front four of Hudson-Odoi, Langer and Gibbs-White behind Awoniyi, and as you've regularly been saying, they are scoring more goals.
Yeah, another two there. One to keep an eye on, definitely. One of the games you mentioned there, Brighton away. Brighton won, Everton won. You called a 2-1 to Everton in your predictions on the Diff show. I didn't see Everton getting anything out of this. Brighton will probably get to the end of the game and just think, yeah, I'll take the draw and is what it is. Very
unfortunately, at the time, I was actually DMing our Everton correspondent, Sean Norton, in injury time when Dunk equalised. Because I can't remember what he said in the chat. It was in a little DM group that we have with our correspondents. And he said something, and I said, yeah, no one's talking about the fact I tipped up Everton to win today. Bang, Brighton scored. Sorry, Sean. That's on me. That's my fault.
Take that. That's your fault. Jinxed it.
The reason I thought Everton might win at the weekend is we didn't see it last week with the Sheffield United game. These games can be really sticky for Brighton.
Yeah, low
you
block
know
is
they're going to
always
have a
tricky.
load of the ball. You know they'll overcommit, and we saw Everton do it better than anyone in May last year in terms of how they countered on Brighton. The goal doesn't come from that at all. Branthwaite's now got 2 from 4, and he's going to be really, really popular on the other side of game week 29. He's cheap, enabling price. He plays every game. They're one of the best teams in the league for clean sheets and actual goals conceded, whatever you think of them. He's an ideal one to carry through the end of the season.
Yeah, I've got Jamal Lascelles sitting there, for example, for ages. Like, if I was wildcarding, I'd swap him out and put in a Branthwaite or something
if I
like that.
wildcard in 30, I can't see me not going with him as one of my defenders, even though it probably would be as a substitute.
Yeah, he'll sit on the bench most weeks, but who cares?
Their fixtures,
4.2, if you need him, you can rely on him. I can't rely on Jamal Lascelles right now.
Their fixtures for the run-in are really good as well. I've got them third on my FDR from game week 30 to the end. Their run from game week 34 till they go to Arsenal in 38 is extraordinary. I wouldn't be surprised if we win 3-4 games in a row over that period. So Jared Branthwaite is an obvious one, I think, to look at, and people have their eyes on him now because you're getting the odd goal coming with this as well. Really good result for Everton. Obviously, really disappointing that they haven't won it. No Mitoma, obviously, for Brighton. De Zerbi wasn't sure if he was going to be back for the midweek game with Wolves in the Cup or not. The headline news, again, of course, is Pervis Estupiñán, who presumably went to Roberto De Zerbi's house last week and had way too much pasta and therefore wasn't in condition. So I think this has become a problem now that people need to deal with. So what's happening if we look at the last...
Sell him, you mean, if you own him?
It's tough, man. It's tough because you're not at the end of the good fixtures, right? What have they got this weekend? It's Fulham and then Forest, isn't it? So there's a couple more good games to go, right? If you were looking to say, I want to buy a player for 2 weeks, like Fulham away and Forest at home would be one of the... You'd probably put Brighton probably in the top 5 over the next 2 weeks. So selling is, a little bit horrible. The problem is that, and De Zerbi spoke about this before the game as well, in terms of their structure of this box that they create between the 2 centre-backs and the midfield. It's not there at the moment. They're doing things very differently with a back 3 in possession. We saw that with Webster moving from right back to right-sided centre-back at Sheffield United. You've now seen that at the weekend with Igor Julio moving from left-back to left-sided centre-back. And what he's done in both games so far is trust Tariq Lamptey in one of the 2 wing-back positions. So he's pushed him really high on this occasion from right back to right wing-back, and moved the Dingra from the right-hand side to the left-hand side with no Mitoma. So if you want Estupiñán, you want him as that left wing-back.
Yep.
But even though you've not had Mitoma playing, Estupiñán's not played. So even if he does play at the moment, it feels like it might be as the left-sided centre-back. So, because if Mitoma plays, he's the one that's going to hold that touchline on the left-hand side. So for Estupiñán, the fact that Mitoma wasn't available, I feel like that's a real kick in the teeth that he's not played. and it needs assessing now. De Zerbi potentially maybe just thinks that he doesn't work in that system, which they're using at the moment to compensate all these lack of attacking players they've had. Now, some of them are coming back, right? So Fatty's back available. Julio Enciso was on the bench at the weekend, and Nadingra is obviously back from AFCON. So it may begin to change. João Pedro is obviously out. Evan Ferguson's out of form. It may also change because Billy Gilmore's now going to have a suspension for 2 Premier League games, those next 2 importantly. And they don't have too many options in that midfield area. So that would be enough to put me off investing in Brighton at the moment. I don't think that it will be easy for Estupiñán owners to sell. It might be the right decision.
Pascal Gross is ticking along nicely, though.
Brilliant.
He's having a great season.
The reality is
it's
as well...
expensive at 6.5, but... He's probably not expensive, but he seems expensive because you're comparing him against the likes of maybe Hwang or
super
any of those Aston Villa guys, $1 million cheaper. You wouldn't go with Gross over Bailey or Luiz right now necessarily because we don't
Why
know
not?
the 29. Again, depends if you're free hitting in 29, sure.
Then
but
it
if
appeals
you're not,
more.
If you're not, then you'd rather a player playing in 29. And so the Villa guys would be more appealing to me. Bailey or Luiz.
The thing is with Gross, he's almost fixture-proof as well.
He is.
In
and
the sense
positional
that,
proof
like...
as well, even if he plays right back or central midfield or 10
But he won't
whatever.
at the moment.
No.
That's one of the beauties as well. That's not going to happen. He has to play central midfield at the moment because he's short of options, and even more so now with Gilmour suspended for the next 2. So I think this would probably be a key point on Brighton because they're obviously going to, almost definitely going to have doubles later in the season, and that'll attract interest. But Duncan and Gross, we might need to start thinking are the only 2 here to consider from a reliability on a minutes perspective. Van Heck, you might be able to add to that.
Well, he's played every game for a long time.
But the rest, it's just like, it's a lottery, isn't it? This with Estupiñán, I don't think it's a criticism of anyone who went there. I get it. It was very much on my radar as well. I was just fortunate the timing-wise didn't work for me. Otherwise, I could have been there myself. It's a headache. You don't need this with Brighton. They've got a very tough Europa draw. It's basically a 50-50 matchup with Roma in Europa League. Roma look a little bit more offensive now that they've sacked you-know-who very recently. Brighton are going to have a major impact in terms of the layout of the blanks and doubles later in the season, purely because the games that they'll have to rearrange would be against Chelsea and Manchester City respectively, and Chelsea have also got the extra games with Arsenal and Tottenham. Manchester City also have to play Tottenham. It's a vicious circle. And there is that element to Brighton's game against Roma could be really important for the run-in and understanding which game ends up as an odds and sod game. So like Chelsea and Tottenham is the most likely. We'll discuss this more on Thursday. But I think if Brighton lose to Roma, then Brighton-Chelsea becomes the most likely. Okay. So there's something to bear in mind on them as well. But they're despite good fixtures, they're largely an avoid Brighton. It's just too much of a headache. You don't even know who's going to play in goal. It's a joke.
Crystal Palace 3, Burnley 0. Burnley will be super disappointed, but really looking down the barrel now. I don't see how they're going to get out of it.
They're not.
But
Let's just be honest about it.
To be fair, but Palace, Glasner's unbeaten right? so far, unbeaten. But he is a draw and a win so far. Comfortable home win in the end, despite obviously not despite, in spite with the red card to Burnley. So they managed to capitalise on it well. But 3-0 home win, they'll be happy. I can't remember who put it on the Twitter. A Palace fan started mentioning the word fun at Selhurst Park and enjoyable.
They've just beat 10-man Burnley.
Yeah, understandable.
Okay. Great, I get it, and I've seen a lot of positive
I'd like to beat a 10-man Burnley right now.
Listen, you've got a combination of, a lot of them wanted to change the manager, which they've obviously done. It's a more exciting appointment. Someone with European pedigrees, Europa League winner Oliver Glasner. The system changes. So it's all new and exciting in terms of what they're doing. I'm just a little calm. You've just beat 10-man Burnley. A 10-man Burnley, you played like an hour with 10 men, right? We're one of the weakest teams in this league. We know that, unfortunately. They're also, by the way, Palace, they're bottom of my FDR for the remainder of this season now.
Okay.
So
good luck.
Bear that in mind. But there's some decent fixtures coming up. Tottenham away is decent for the offensive ones this weekend. Luton in 28 is good. Newcastle at home in 29, if Newcastle lose to Blackburn tomorrow night, is fine. Forest away 30. Then their running is pretty dreadful. what they importantly need to do is just keep ticking over these next 3 or 4.
Yep.
Make sure the cushion is there because you don't want to be looking over that shoulder.
That
going
win
into
makes
the
a big
last 6 or
difference.
7.
3 points over 1 point. When you're chipping away with draws, it's all right. But when you can put a 3 points on the table, it's given them what the cushion now is 8 points to Luton. It's plenty.
And you're probably taking points potentially off of Everton Forest, right?
Yeah.
We did expect to hear last week on Everton's appeal, and we didn't. So I think that's probably any time now when we get it. Should be this week, really. But obviously they could get added more again, and obviously so could Forest. So Palace are probably 2 wins from safety. Probably. What, they're on 28? So
28.
Yeah. And 2 points from safety, and I'm sure they'll get
2 wins.
that. 2 wins, yeah.
Yeah, as opposed to 2 points. Just checking.
Thanks for correcting me. I told you. Cheers, mate.
Right.
Every chance to be back.
Zaha played well for Palace, didn't he?
Bruv, I know I'm on drugs, but I'm not that bad. Jesus Christ.
I want to try and catch you out a little bit. Let's just throw in random names of players.
Yeah, Eze might be back for the weekend.
Why is Ashley Barnes not playing for Burnley at the moment?
He's at Norwich, you dickhead. Fofana's getting decent reviews for Burnley. He might be one to look at in the running as an enabler if you want to go 5 in midfield and kind of down that route maybe. Yeah. But there's Charlie Taylor owners, woohoo! You got your 1 pointer.
Yeah, he is a very blast much from the predicted. Past that is still at Burnley.
He's still hanging about in people's teams. Well, I don't know when you're going to use it. Like, it's fine. It's a body. You're not the thing is, if you've got Charlie Taylor and you're heading for 29, you ain't selling him.
No.
He's got a game, right?
Yeah.
The 1 point's better than no point, basically. So he'll hang about for people. Otherwise, I just wouldn't be looking at Burnley at this moment in time. Bournemouth at home, West Ham away next 2. A game they're capable of getting points in, but you just wouldn't expect it at the moment, to be honest. For Palace, we got what we expected in terms of the back 3. That's very much been an Oliver Glasner trademark. We saw them play that at Everton anyway, so completely expected. I think the takeaway, and we can't read anything into this too much because of Burnley playing with 10 men for so long at the weekend, but they were just so much higher up the pitch. So, I mean, if you look at Tyreek Mitchell's heat map at the weekend, you can't believe how far forward he is. I would be staggered if his average position has ever been higher than that in a game of football for Crystal Palace. Now, wing-back's different role. And I think Munoz at right back, who I think is in 0.0% of teams at the moment, is one that will catch the eye. He might even be one, if they end up playing in 29, that people start to look at as a potential one to be a bit rogue and wild card. He looks a good technical player. He obviously gets into advanced positions. That's different for Palace. I think it's interesting. I think about the game against Tottenham at the weekend. We'll discuss this on COTC tomorrow, because I'm recording with Ricky and Rory for that tonight, for tomorrow's COTC on Tottenham Palace. And I do wonder if Palace are going to be braver, if it might play into Tottenham's hands at the weekend.
Yep.
But also, playing against back 5 has been difficult for Tottenham to break down. So Palace will need to find a balance between being a little bit more aggressive. They do want to go and press. And we've certainly seen that at the weekend, or whether that changes against Tottenham. You can't read too much into destroying a 10-man Burnley at the weekend, but it is a great result for Palace. Eze, if he's back at the weekend, obviously a big bonus. Gay and Elise, we're not quite sure on the prognosis at the moment. Chris Richards scored.
He did.
3.9, and as I said to you, for you and Clates on the last pod, I think he'll stay in the team at the moment. I'd imagine when Gay's back, he'll move to right-sided centre-back. But I think he'll stay in the team at the moment. Rory will probably confirm that for us on COTC.
Normal service has been resumed at Old Trafford, James.
Yeah, it felt like it had.
Back to reality for the Red Devils. Fulham 2, Manchester United 1. Without Palhinha, I couldn't see past a Manchester United win, to be honest with you. They'd been doing a lot better. I thought Bruno Fernandes would be able to control that middle of the pitch without Palhinha there snapping at his heels. Fulham have been good all season, if I'm honest with you. They've been decent all season. So I'm trying to remember when they've been slapped, Fulham. I don't feel like this season they've had many games where they've been slapped.
Germany away games they've won.
No.
So
first one?
Saturday was their first away win since opening day.
Wow. But the question is, how many times have they been slapped this season? Their goal difference is only -6, which isn't too bad considering their league position.
No, probably not. But then also remember they had those 2 5-0s in a row
against us. Yeah.
So if you made them +1s, you're taking 8 off that goal difference.
True.
So In terms of slapped, no, they don't really feel like that sort of team. They feel like the sort of team, if they're set up correctly, can obviously trouble some good opponents. Look, they beat Arsenal. It's 2 months ago. It probably feels like a lifetime ago. They're set up differently without Palhinha. Their compensation, what I thought they'd do to compensate it was play Alex Iwobi in a central role, because Palhinha, you can leave as a single pivot. You can't really leave someone else to do that role. But I thought they might in terms of their structure, in the sense that they're not in danger of going down. They're not going to get themselves into European places. I actually spoke last week in terms of them being the first to mention, are they going to be heading towards the beach? They certainly disproved that theory on Saturday. They played Lukic and Harrison Reed to compensate for losing the one player in Palhinha. Andreas Pereira played even more advanced role than he normally plays, way more like the auxiliary central number 10 that we saw very much last season. He's rather been more like a 8-10 hybrid during the course of this season, floating between right and left half spaces, depending on whether Tom Cairney played or not. So he played with those two sitting, was allowed to the freedom, and the front four were allowed to just go and do their business at the top end. Iwobi played on the left wing, finished his goal really well. I think that really took people by surprise. Yep. The fact that he actually finished it off an Adama Traore assist as well, which
I had to double check. It's not that Adama Traore.
Can I be honest with you? When I was watching, this is dangerous for me to say because they're playing my team in a couple of weeks. But even though I knew that Traore was going to assist Iwobi, when Traore carried the ball, I thought his pass would be shit. And I still thought Iwobi was going to miss when he had the shot as well. But Iwobi actually being back for them is massive because he really carries the energy. I must remember, it wasn't just Palhinha they missed at the weekend. Willian as well has been a big and important player for them. They actually made 6 changes to their lineup, with Adebayo coming back in. Calvin Bassey is a far more athletic player than Tim Ream. That's helpful as well. He obviously scored the first goal.
Physical, I would say.
Reed is not Ream is not the most athletic. He's very experienced.
Physical.
But you can play a little bit higher up the pitch with someone like a Bassey than you would do with a Tim Ream.
Bassey likes a little bit of a ruck. That's all I'm saying.
Look, really...
But it's his game, isn't it? So.
Really, really good win for Fulham. And actually, Brighton at home, Wolves away, Tottenham at home, leading into these forthcoming games, is not terrible. Muniz was really unlucky not to score again. I know I didn't see a huge amount of the game, but I know... Ian Wright said on Match of the Day that he thought it was man of the match and played really well. And he stayed on for the whole game. Yeah. His hold-up was involved in that second goal. So he probably stays in. I think it's the same case with him. If we needed an enabler forward for 29, that would be really useful right now. Most of us don't. Most of us are going to end up with Haaland, Solanke, Watkins, or I've got Tony. That's it. So I probably don't really see the room for him. If you're free hitting in 29, you're probably not going to need the money, and it's still going to be Watkins and Tony plus one or someone else. So I don't see, unfortunately, despite a really good result, I don't see people looking at them at the weekend. For United...
They go to City at the weekend, so...
Listen, Gary Robinson gets a lot of flack for being negative about United. And despite the 4 wins in a row, he was again last week on COTC to say, calm down. Yeah. Calm down. Like, they won very late at Wolves, and they did play really well in that game. They won very late against Villa. Against your team, they weren't, I know, 1-3-0. They weren't great. Yeah. And they kind of escaped. I know they had a lot of chance against Luton, but they didn't play well either. So it was like, look, just take stock, assess this. But I bet most of us thought when Harry Maguire scored, they'd win. You suddenly thought, it will swing now. They've already done that this season, like Brentford. Yep. They'd had other late winners, such as Villa and Wolves, as recently mentioned. So it was kind of a gasp when you heard that Fulham had scored again. Several disappointing performers for United. We have to say that Rasmus Højlund was a massive miss. Yeah. And Erik ten Hag has kept saying, when all the players are fit, you will see the results improve. They did. They lost Martinez, they lost Shaw, they've lost Højlund. Højlund is a massive loss. Marcus Rashford played through the middle. The Athletic had reported that Mari Forsum was going to start on Friday night, and he did, but he played in a wider position that I think many of us thought would happen. It meant Garnacho moved to the left. Bruno obviously stayed in his more central role. To be honest, though, the majority of that squad is back fit, and there's an argument to say Harry Maguire might have been sent off as well. Personally, I think the yellow is okay on that one, but they got well beat. The reality is this wasn't a smash and grab, fluke, anything like that. Fulham were deserving winners, and I don't know how United got to half-time at 0-0. And that suddenly, all that good form and confidence building has just evaporated in one. Imagine now if they lose to Forest on Wednesday in the Cup before they go to City on Sunday. United, all through this little period of winning games, have still been giving up good chances. And for me, the likes of Haaland will find it easier on Sunday than he would against certain other teams. I don't think United are necessarily capable of just going there and putting up a wall and playing on the counter at the moment. Particularly, we have to assume that Haaland is out. God, that's horrible saying them two together when you're on drugs, mate, honestly.
Haaland. Interesting. Like, if you look at it statistically, United had more possession, way more shots, way more big chances, higher XG in the game.
I don't care.
I'm just saying statistically, you could look at it and say, well, they were still in it, and like you said, they could have still got away with something.
You could look at expected goal difference this season and see Tottenham knocking about the bottom half. A bottom half team. You can get outliers here.
Championship at best.
Yeah, okay, babe.
Bournemouth 0, Manchester City 1. Comfy enough, not comfy enough in the sense that
for the rough 400,000 or so FPL managers who bought Rasmus Højlund last week, by the way, and were unaware for whatever reason that he was injured or didn't move it on for one reason or another, they're buying Solanke this week, by the way. Bournemouth were really unlucky not to get something from this, actually. Two sides of this that I'd really like to cover. One is that good side, Bournemouth. I think the big FPL takeaway one from this weekend is the biggest news over this week is about Lloyd Kelly and his potential availability. Because if he's going to be out for a couple of weeks, the one to get is Milos Kerkez back in at left back, rather than Senesi, who's now on 8 yellows.
Yeah, I saw he got booked again. I was going to buy him as well.
Now, look, what's the chances of him getting booked at the weekend and then in the first game of 28 and missing the second one?
It's going to happen, isn't it? Is this what football, FPL folklore?
Probably not. And I think we've seen this again with the likes of Bruno Guimaraes and even Ruaidhri, actually, I noticed, pulled out of a tackle at the weekend because he's getting close as well. Once players hit I'm close to it, the awareness, I think, grows. But it's easier for centre-backs to obviously pick these up. Kerkez will become the best choice if Kelly's going to be ruled out for a couple of weeks. He will become popular very quickly, in my opinion. I did have a little comparison look last night, actually, on Zabani and Senesi from an attacking output perspective, just to see if we were all wasting our time on Senesi anyway, and if we could just go to Zabani. Senesi and Zabani's XG is both terrible. Senesi's XA is significantly better than Zabani. So, unfortunately, there's nothing to that particular argument. Senesi would be the better of the two, but has obviously got these yellow cards accumulating. If you're obviously going to perhaps wild card in 30, then surely you're okay to get through 28. If, say, they don't play in 29 as well. Yep. But you have to factor that in. So I think Senesi will still get attention, but maybe don't buy this week if you don't have to and wait. Again, I think if Kelly's out for a couple of weeks, it's get Kerkez anyway. Solanke's going to be unavoidable. I think that midfield that they played behind Solanke at the weekend, Semenyo, Kluivert, Tavernier, the three behind, I described it in the preview I did last week for the patrons as being that's their best three to go and press. And they would be aggressive against City and not just back off. And that's absolutely to their credit, because they did try and press Manchester City at the right times. And in the second half, they did it very well, actually.
Yep.
Alex Scott can disrupt that. Luis Sinistera can disrupt that. Dango Utara can disrupt that. Philip Billing will be back from suspension. That can disrupt that. Good luck getting the one that will play twice in 28. I know that in terms of choice, I think Tavernier is probably the best one. But good luck getting the minutes out of him. And you have to remember, they'll either play Wolves on the Saturday afterwards in 29, 3 days after playing Luton, or they're going to have an FA Cup quarter-final probably afterwards as well. The absolute Brucey bonus here for Bournemouth ownership for 28 would be if Leicester beat them and Wolves still go through in the cup, so then Bournemouth blank in 29 and just don't play at all, then that's your best opportunity of getting something like Tavernier and getting the minutes you want. Because otherwise, I think it'll be rotation. And for me, I'm highly likely to be leaving that midfield
just
area.
Just Solanke only, and maybe
if
Kirkes,
Kelly's out, I'm very interested in Kirkes. Very interested.
Price Kirkes now, is he 4-3? 4-4?
I don't know. I would say those heading that way, the value probably doesn't matter. He'll either be 4-4 or 4-3.
He's 4-4 right now, yeah.
Yeah, that Lloyd Kelly information is crucial. For City, in terms of guessing Bournemouth's lineup, you've now got the same problem with Den. I think Luke Williams, this FPL on Twitter, summed it up very well. And he's very good in terms of predicting City lineups. He doesn't really want to at the moment. And I understand why, because we're now in the stage of playing Kovacic as a 10, Matthias Nunes as a left winger, and John Stones as a left-sided centre-back that moves into a right-sided 10 half-space hybrid position. Unbelievable. Wow. His summary was that other than Edison, Haaland, Foden, good luck guessing the rest at the moment. You can probably add Ruaidhri to that as well. Yeah. But at some point, things like Copenhagen, maybe in the Champions League, there might be a rest between the Manchester United game and the Liverpool game, possibly even for someone like him. These league games are coming up. United, Liverpool, if they played Brighton 29, then Arsenal. Ruaidhri's obviously going to start, but I think he's on 7 yellows, if you can check that, Suj, I think. And like I said, he pulled out a one at the weekend, Ruaidhri, where there was a counter, and ordinarily would have just pulled him down and taken the yellow, and he stopped short. Guardiola is not going to want him absent for these games coming up. I've seen a lot of comments at the weekend of City being boring at the moment. And I get it.
Lack of goals
in their games recently.
7 yellows for Ruaidhri, James.
Yeah, thank you. Their controlling, stifling way of playing is frustrating. But I tell you what, Bournemouth, if they'd have equalised, you'd have had every reason to say they deserved that at the weekend. And for me, as a tactical head, I don't know how anyone could look at the way John Stones played at the weekend and find that boring, because I just could have just watched him alone for that game. He wasn't just moving Suj from left-sided centre-back into midfield with Ruaidhri. He was moving to right-sided 10 position. He was working. Referees running diagonals. If you've never known this before, you'll never unhear this. Referees running diagonals. Don't run in straight lines. They run across the pitch in a diagonal. That's John Stones. John Stones played an opposite. A referee will normally run from the right-back position to the left-wing position. John Stones did it the opposite. Remarkable. And that, the way they alleviated the problems I spoke about last week with Alvarez and Doku on that side and Chelsea exploiting that on that side, they obviously used Kovacic in a higher position, who could then go and slot in with Ruaidhri when John Stones went on his wanders.
Yep.
Nunes at left wing, I can't explain.
No. But let's talk about a team that, if Newcastle had equalised, they wouldn't have deserved it, because Arsenal slapped them.
Probably one more thing we should cover, City.
Go on.
KDB.
I wouldn't own him. Like, if I owned him, I'd move it on. But they're just nursing him back in, right? So
yeah,
and he can go off any time. It's a difficult one to hold, but
I think he'll play Sunday against United.
But not in the cup.
Confident on that.
But not in the cup.
I think after that, there's then a good enough excuse to move on. The problem is, those who are sitting there with KDB be looking at things like Son this week, and it'll be really tempting. And I'm not saying don't go there. I'm just saying that I think you'll play against City. I think you'll play a higher position. Thank you. The drugs do work. I don't think Alvarez will start against United. I think Foden will play in a wider position. Guardiola cannot drop him at the moment, but I think he'll play in a wider position. I think City will defend out of possession in a 4-4-2 with De Bruyne up front with Haaland, and he'll be allowed to go and float as the 10 in possession. I will be surprised if De Bruyne doesn't start against United, and it's a big game, and you know what he is. That's all I'm saying. I think afterwards, there's then an excuse to very much move on. I would find that difficult to sell if I owned him this week. Sorry, carry on.
Arsenal, I was saying, slapped Newcastle good and proper.
Absolutely obliterated
The first half
them.
was... I watched the first half and then didn't bother with the second half. I went to cook dinner. But that period of play before the second goal, I think because there was like one momentary loss of possession within that entire build-up, but it must have been 40, 50, 60 passes before finally the through ball went in and Martinelli dragged it back.
I'd be surprised if that's high, because I think I'd have heard of it.
It was a lot, though, side to side. I think they lost possession in between for like momentarily, but they're just mesmerising. They were just keeping the ball so well. Newcastle couldn't get a glove on them.
Arsenal were outstanding. That's one of the best performances I've seen from any team this season. They strangled them.
Yeah,
They couldn't breathe, Newcastle. It wasn't just the in-ball possession. It was how aggressive they were out of
Declan Rice, I thought it was just dominating that entire midfield.
Well, I
I'm
think
gonna boss it, and he bossed
he
it.
was allowed to obviously go and
A bit
press
further forward.
in alongside as well, because obviously Jorginho was in the team and he was excellent, Jorginho. But then even when they got it out, like White was aggressive against Gordon, Saliba or Gabriel would go and be aggressive against Isak. Isak never had a kick, really. Kivior dealt with Almiron fine, no problems. Newcastle, I felt, worked out by the 40th minute, to be precise, that their only way out was to play the ball over the top. Started moving back into this back three shape that they did at Forest and started shoving Trippier up the pitch and trying to look for him in behind and moving Almiron into more central areas. And they had a little brief bit of joy right at the end of the first half and right at the start of the second half, but that was about their lot. And their only way out was literally over the top. And the thing is, if you put yourself in a foot race with the likes of Gabriel and Saliba, they're fine with it, right? Arsenal were outstanding. At the same time, Newcastle were horrendous. They have to be better than that. I spoke about this last week, about stop with the excuses now. Like, the majority of the back line is back available. The majority of the team offensively is coming back. Yes, there's still injury issues. You know, I forgive the fact that Isak's not fully fit, etc. Joe Willock has been a miss for them, come on and scored the goal. But they're not a million miles away from what their best team would be, and probably helped by playing Livramento against Saka rather than Dan Burn as well. Livramento had a difficult afternoon. Dan Burn probably would have had a more difficult afternoon. With the way they set up, that was the right choice to go with Livramento. Dubravka missed out with illness. I spoke about criticism of him last week. I do think he'll probably come back in for Karius, because I think Karius might be a different problem in terms of set plays, and his ability to command and create confidence in that area is no better than Dubravka, to be honest. I think I spoke last week about not ruling them out of the top four because their running is great, and I actually still feel like that. But they're probably they're in a zone where they're going to have to score goals. The last year when they went on them runs of like 1-0s and stuff like that, like, you just don't see this side being anywhere near capable of doing that till Nick Pope's back. I was thinking, Sudge, let's say Newcastle lose tomorrow night to Blackburn and their game at Palace is on, and I'm sitting there with 2 million in the bank, and I've got, let's use this as an example. I've got Torres and Porro both flagged, right? But if I'm heading towards 29, I don't really want to get rid of either of those two players, even if they weren't available this weekend. So what would maybe be a solution for me? Trips. Get Trips in for the 3 games. Wolves at home, Chelsea away, and then Palace away. And it's fine. There's nothing wrong with doing that. But I tell you what, my expectations on that wouldn't be expectations of what they normally would be getting Kieran Trippier.
I mean, 2 points per appearance, 6 points, and maybe an assist, 3 more points. If you get 9 to 10 points over those 3 games, 3 a game, 4 a game, 4 points a game, 12 points you'd be well happy with. But there's going to be no clean sheets in there, James. I don't see him keeping a clean sheet in any of those games. Which means they probably will.
I mean, we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it in a second. But it's a better game for Wolves going to Newcastle than it was playing Sheffield United yesterday.
If you didn't own Arsenal in terms of Saka, would you just get it done and get him in?
Yeah. Yeah, even if you're heading towards 29.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
but there's a chance their game could be on.
In 29?
Yeah.
Well, we'll find out in the next couple of days.
Yeah.
If it is on...
If it's on, Saka's coming in for me this week, no question.
No debate. I'd almost have to find a way to do it, I think.
Agreed.
He will be captained by plenty this week because of the Sheffield United home record. Arsenal have obviously another 4 off the back of scoring, 5, 6, 5 a couple before that.
I think they've scored more in the league in February than United all season or something like that.
Your commentator, I think it was Darren Fletcher, said on TNT, he said they'd become the first team in Premier League history to score 2 or more in 7 consecutive halves
of football. But that, as a fan, like you going into any half of football, we're going to score a couple of goals. 7 consecutive halves of football, you're getting 2 goals. That's a goal every 20 minutes when you're watching your team as an average.
If I said to you now, Sheffield United would get a 0-0 against Arsenal, what would your reaction to that be?
That's football. But it's unlikely.
To be honest,
a 0-0, no. If they were to, if you said they're going to scrape a 2-2 with like a shithouse set piece.
You think
goal
Sheffield United scored twice against that?
Set piece and like a penalty or something.
The only way Arsenal don't win on Monday night is if something weird happens, like an early red card or something like that.
And it is football, but I mean I don't see anyone betting against Arsenal.
That would be close to, I think. I think they'll be close to. City probably rule this out, but they'll definitely be the shortest price I think there will ever have been in an away game in terms of bookmakers' odds. And it will be one of the shortest prices, I think, for an away team in an away game in Premier League history. They should go there and absolutely wipe the floor with them. Just way too good against a poor opponent.
So about Wolves won Sheffield United too, because they did come up against Sheffield United, and they didn't slap them.
They were unlucky yesterday. They were unlucky.
Tomo seems to feel like they should have got something out of the game. That's our Sheffield United correspondent. FPL Blades, Tomo.
Yeah, he has every right to think that. There's one big problem, though. They didn't actually create a huge amount. I think XG was about 0.6.
Okay.
Like, it's shite, isn't it? But in terms of how they played absolutely fine. Gustavo Harmer played a little bit more advanced with James McAtee. I did say to the patrons on the piece I did that I thought they would do something more offensive. That was partly Oliver Norwood sitting in deeper with Vinicius Souza. We saw a little bit of old Chris Wilder knocking about here with Amir Hodzic and Robinson really pushing over on the overlaps when the opportunity arose. And Rhian Brewster up front, I thought was really good, actually. It didn't look like it was going to score, but it was a handful. And it just had a bit more life about them. That said, it was also a combination of, and Gary O'Neill did a great interview after the game, basically saying we were a bit shit. It didn't play well, Wolves. He used a really interesting line, which I think he's one of the few managers could get away with this at the moment because he has done an exceptional job. He said, we didn't know what to do with the ball, which is a little bit alarming. And that's also in spite of the fact they had a very interesting game plan here, which centred a lot on Ray and Nori going and playing in midfield.
Yeah.
He moved from left wing back into central midfield, which primarily allowed Mario Lemina to box crash a little bit on occasion. And it meant what it did mean, unfortunately, for those who went Pedro Neto, is that he stayed really wide on the left-hand side and only really moves off that on fast counter-attacking breaks. There's one they broke from a corner. His desperation to try and get to the right-hand side was remarkable. And I think he would prefer to play out there. Hwang was very, very quiet. The distribution from the back, I spoke about this literally with Wolves centre-backs last week. He's like, they're not bad on the ball, but if you're asking them to punch it and start creating, it's not good enough. The midfield too, the game was slower, so you didn't get the best out of them because I think they're quite all action, all energy. That, with Nori moving into midfield, I think didn't necessarily have an adverse effect on them. But I thought it slowed them down on quite a few occasions because I think we're trying to work it out. And it might be, that he's just gone, I can try this in a game like this and I want to see what it looks like. And he might be behind the scenes quietly happy that they've just got through it and won the game. But particularly in the second half, they were poor. But I spoke last week about the win at Tottenham, the win at Chelsea, and not reading too much into those games in terms of what it would mean for playing Sheffield United low block at home. because it still was that. And again, don't read too much into yesterday when they go to Newcastle at the weekend, because I would not be surprised if they create really good opportunities on turnover. The game could be, by the way, an absolute dream for Pedro Neto. Really could be. So if you've committed to this choice on Hwang or Neto or the handful that's gone for Sarabia, don't fear the red fixture of Newcastle away at the weekend. In most cases, play your player. I wouldn't be surprised if they go there and win.
James, they are now above West Ham on points. They're above Newcastle on points. They're above Chelsea on points, are Wolves. They'll be well happy with that at the moment.
Yes. Yes.
And there are some games in hand there to consider.
It's also another reason you can almost forgive the performance yesterday. And unfortunately as well, because there are two really, really weak teams in this league, unfortunately, we are absolutely at this stage now where I know people, Burnley and Sheffield United have to start winning games. Well, of course they do. But everybody else, when they plays them, is going, we've got to beat these. Shit. And that's why there might have been kind of disappointment from some of the Wolves fan base recently or on yesterday, because you could sit there and ask, well, hang on, we got 4 at Chelsea, we got 2 at Tottenham, we got 4 at Brentford, we got a good draw at Brighton. Ooh, we should demolish Sheffield United. The game tactically doesn't work like that.
No, low blocks versus free-flowing
like
football.
You're asking a team that's been exceptional on transition to play when they haven't got the opportunity to do it. You're now asking them to control the football match. And it's not that Wolves can't, by the way. I think they've improved massively on the ball, but it's still not like they're comfortable for them. If you ask Wolves to play that way every week, they don't finish top half. They're in a process. It's not a criticism. They're in a process.
Good. But still one more game left to go through tonight. West Ham 4, Brentford 0. Great tactical performance from Moyes. And 4 goals from Mikel Antonio, who looked tired last week, James.
Let's see if this has all been down to Lucas Paquetá or not, because I'm almost certain he'll start tonight.
Yeah. Desperately need him.
We should cover them briefly, because I think there will be a little bit of interest if you do well tonight. Bowen over Kudos.
There's nothing to justify it. At the moment, on current form, earlier in the season, Bowen was still ticking along. It's just nothing to justify it, I would say.
Brentford, we think Ethan Pinnock will be back after the international break, so that's a sell if you've got. With what they've got coming up, so it's Chelsea at home, Arsenal away. I think other than Tony, if you want Tony, fine, I get it. Other than that, come back for them in 29, I think.
Yeah.
They're an interesting one as well for the running. Their running, I think, is pretty good. Looking at their fixtures from sort of 29 onwards to the end, it's good. Other than Villa away, their more difficult games are at home. I know it's been only Villa from the top 5 at the moment, and they'll obviously have like Chelsea out, playing them twice out the way, and a few others as well. So, yeah, they're worth keeping an eye on, but I don't see how you invest in them now. For Tottenham, Udogie we think will probably be available for Saturday. Porro we're not sure of at the moment. My instinct would be that it probably will play. If you're investing in a Tottenham attacker at the moment, if you can get Son, go Son if that's what you want to do. I also do think, however, there's a case for waiting until 29. I'm not sure if that game against Palace is now going to be more open or even harder for Tottenham. Right. More open because they'll want to press more, but even perhaps more harder because they'll retreat into a back 5 when we get into their half. You can spin that narrative either way. But I think Son, on the penalties, most explosive, and the fact that they're all fit in the offensive areas now, you might begin to get an eating into Richarlison's minutes a little bit more. Saturday's not an ideal game for Richarlison going up against a back 3. I don't think. I obviously hope I'm wrong on that. The other Tottenham attackers I wouldn't consider at the moment. Chelsea, particularly for those who may well land on free hitting in 29, and subject to the cup results, that might become a lot more of us. That might include me, for example. If suddenly it looks like, right, free hit 29, Cole Palmer goes back to the top of my agenda with what's to come. So it's Brentford away this week. Newcastle home 28, we've spoken about that enough.
Yeah.
If I'm free hitting 29, whether they play Arsenal or not is irrelevant. Then you walk into 30, Burnley at home, and own a good run for Chelsea, and certainly almost guaranteed doubles in that running as well.
Yeah.
So I think if people conclude to free hit this week, we discussed last week, me and Clayton, that those who were heading towards free hit in 29 had probably kept Palmer. But it might be a new batch who have let go recently, alter their strategy and go, shit. And I would buy Palmer back before I got a Tottenham player under that strategy. Tottenham players will also appeal if you're heading on that strategy of free hit 29, as will Liverpool players. But that's a mess at the minute.
Right.
Because of the injuries elsewhere, right? We don't know where we stand with Salah. Judging by Darwin Núñez's reaction to the winning goal yesterday, he probably will be available for the weekend against Nottingham Forest, and it's a good fixture. But with Manchester City afterwards as well, be honest, if they play City with the team that played yesterday, I think they'll get beat. So, and I'm sure it will end up being stronger than that, but there's plenty who are not going to make it back. We know Trent isn't, for example. If you put Szoboszlai, Núñez and Salah back in that, in time for City, that might be all right. Endo, who was fantastic yesterday, left in a protective boot, but don't read too much into that. We've seen that before where players, it's just protection. They play the next game. McAllister was fatigued as hell. Luis Diaz literally just could not run at the end of that game at all. They had to put him at centre forward at the end because he was so spent. He almost definitely won't start on Wednesday. And then if you add that back in, what sort of team are they playing against Southampton? Now, unfortunately, Southampton have just actually hit a bit of a wall and started having some bad results, having gone 20 plus without the feet. I think it's 3 and 4 now. But honestly, I wouldn't be surprised Liverpool go out this week. And it's the sort of thing that's going to change people's narratives massively.
Yeah, a lot to learn. So make sure wherever you are listening to the podcast, you hit the subscribe button, the notification bell, the like button, whatever it may be, because you'll get notified as soon as our additional content for the rest of the week goes live, including that chip pod on Thursday. James, it's a question that we've had in on the internet. We may as well touch on it now. In addition to obviously the FA Cup games, when do you expect that we'll know a little bit more on TV fixtures as well? Do you think there could be any announcement this week on the next batch of Sky fixtures?
We're looking at probably minimum
BT and whatever.
4 weeks. So
we've got until the end of March right now, haven't we?
In theory, it's March this weekend, isn't it?
It is.
In theory, we should get April TV fixtures this week.
Right.
I bet we don't.
Okay.
I bet we might get sort of like the midweek of game week 31 and then the weekend of 32, and they stagger it backwards.
Okay.
The TV fixture, you might think that's irrelevant for FPL. If we get the picture, it will help the navigation of understanding which games can go where in terms of midweek days, and it really will help our picture in terms of projecting 34 and 37. But the honest answer is it's up to the Premier League, and I wouldn't be surprised if they break it down rather than giving us all of April.
Cool.
All of April will take us up to like 35 or so, which obviously cannot include the midweek 34 fixtures.
No.
That's why I think you might get a stagger of announcements.
They've been doing that for a little while now, where they're 2 weeks at a time type thing. Rather than the whole month.
You might get that.
Good old Premier League. What do the listeners have to look forward to for the rest of this week, buddy? And we'll get a couple of questions on the internet in as well.
So COTC tomorrow's Tottenham versus Palace with Ricky Saunders and Rory McLoughlin-Dowd. Sky Fantasy Wednesday, the big Chip Talk pod Thursday. Friday, I'm going to do not the deadline stream on Friday night at 7 o'clock. My body cannot get from home to Tottenham in reliable fashion from a 1:30 deadline to the 3 o'clock kickoff. I'm going to tell you straight now, I'm not doing a deadline stream on Saturday. So I'll do a stream on Friday night, and I will put it out as an audio on Friday night once we've got the information of everything as well. It will include your usual deadline stream graphics and stuff. Patreon podcast this week, Q&A today. Tomorrow's a quiz. Wednesday, Tottenham. Thursday, Money in Football on the future of the League Cup, which is on topic following the final yesterday. Friday will be our Game Week 27 preview show. Our advanced tier content this week will include 2 Chip Talk videos on looking at a wild card now, both today, prior to the cup fixtures, and then looking again on Thursday at what may change. We'll also include Twitter stories from tonight's Monday Night Football, the team news stream on Friday, and Suj, you are guesting on Nico's Corner this week.
I am. I'm here. This is the beginning of the end.
That will be available for intermediate plus tier patrons as well.
Are we doing that? Are we? Armageddon is happening.
Yep.
For those that don't know much about Nico's Corner, you need to just get onto Patreon to find out about Nico's Corner. It's highly anticipated, this, and it's highly dangerous.
Can you let me do the edit before I put it out?
It's all right. I can regulate the answers.
Can you?
To Nico's questions.
I saw you and Clates on Friday. I don't know if you can.
Well, there was a comment has just come in on Twitter, which was, James is not on the pod for 1 week, and what have I just listened to? Sujan Shah in detail talking about the biggest animal that he could strangle and settling on a seagull. I didn't settle on the seagull as the biggest animal I could strangle. I just said that that's one that I would like to strangle.
My favourite bit was when you were talking about asking. The bit you did is really worth listening to at the start on learning how to ask better questions was brilliant, by the way. But then someone asked a question you didn't like, and you said, Nico's laughing, right? Someone asked a question you didn't like, and you went, this question's designed to get worked up. Don't get worked up about it. And I'm like, Suj, you're getting fucking worked up, bruv. That's
true. And Clayton said, I got a bit animated. I didn't realise I was as animated. It was more the point of making the point that you can learn about somebody else from the question that they ask. And anyway, I was defending you because he was having a go at you for supporting a club that has never won the European Cup from memory.
Okay, mate.
And therefore, your footballing
I don't know why you even covered it. It was such a weird question.
Is zero. It was just there as a question. Anyway, we did talk about strangling animals. There's not a lot of good questions that we've had in on the
That's why I ain't doing the unanswered keys this week. It's a waste of time.
Yeah, exactly that. Let's answer Andrew Steddles, though.
Yep.
What are your thoughts on a bench boost in a single game week? And he says game week 27. Am I being an idiot?
Nope. No, I've spoken
Depends on who you're.
I've spoken about this a lot. I mean, look, I'll sit here in 3 days and I'll probably know what I'm doing. I suspect that's probably going to land in free hit 37 for me. But remember, I haven't got bench boost. It's different to a lot of other people. But it's that. 37 will be the best for a bench boost. It's also probably going to be hell on earth in terms of rotation and stuff. It's why I bench boost in game week 1. I think if the opportunity lands for people, and this might be the sort of week where it does, then crack on. Okay. I think there's opportunities for it. I think also, I'd say something I think might be really interesting, Suj, is I think this would be out the box thinking. I think a lot of people might head towards bench boost in 37 and realise their game week 36 team is so good that they'll want to do it then.
Okay.
I think that's something that might happen.
We should keep an eye on that. Cool. I think that's it with the questions. We've covered most of them off in terms of Bournemouth defenders and things like that. A lot of people just jumping in the comments to welcome you back, so welcome back.
Thank you.
We've made it through this episode. A Q&A coming at you today for the patrons and all of the other stuff that we mentioned earlier. Other than that, though, stay safe, look after yourselves. Good luck to West Ham tonight. Ciao for now.
Thanks, everyone. Good luck to Brentford tonight. Not that any of us really give a toss. Thanks, everyone. Be nice to each other. Cue music, please. Man-child.
Is it 110? 115?
Yeah. Didn't need to be longer. 7 games, isn't it?
It is only 7 games.
Plus Thursday's going to be about 3 hours. Not quite. I'm joking.